Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to explain how to get the true length using the cone method as well as the projection method, and I'm going to do this with a line segment AB, and I will use these two methods to determine the true length. And I'm using TurboCAD 2021 as a backdrop on which I will do the design. I also want to use this as a basic explanation of the use of TurboCAD, but just the basic functions in order to do these school drawings. First of all, I'm going to start with the new page, and I'm going to new from template, and I'm going to use the normal metric because we use the normal metric system. And then I have my blank canvas. I can activate my grid or I can deactivate it. So that is what you will need to do and decide if you use it. I'm going to deactivate mine for now. And then I'm going to start by just drawing a XY line on my paper. And I'm holding down Shift as I have selected the line tool here on the left. So if I click and hold on the line tool, I have a whole range of other options from to choose. But I am going to use the line tool, so therefore I'm just going to go and start randomly holding Shift and just drag indefinitely. And then I'm going to press Tab on the keyboard. That will give me the option at the bottom left. You will see it is how colored in blue, the length box. And I'm going to just make a line more or less of 100 millimeters. I want the angle to be 0 because it's a horizontal line. And I press enter. That will then give me my line segment at exactly 100 millimeters and a 0-degree angle. So now what I want to do is I just want to randomly label this line segment. So I'm going to go to this capital A text option here on the far left. I'm going to right click on it because I want to create properties for it. And this panel comes up, and I'm going to go to text because text is what I want to give properties to. I want to be able to use Arial, but my height I want to change now to 4 millimeters in height. So I need to go and change that to 4 millimeters. So I'm just going to press 4 and enter. Now I'm going to select my text tool, and I'm going to place more or less where I want my XY labels to be. So I'm going to use capital X there and capital Y over on the right hand side, and then I use the selector tool, this arrow head on the top left, and I'm going to move my X, and I use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out all the time, and I'm more or less going to just place my X and Y next to my line, and there I have my XY line. Now what we want to do is just randomly, more or less to the left hand side of my line, go and place a reference point. So I'm going to hold down on this tool, which in TurboCAD is referred to as a construction line, but I like to rename it as a waterline because in technical drawings our construction lines are light continuous lines, whereas these lines that they use here is actually more a waterline, as you will see when I use it. So I'm going to hold down on it so that all the other options come up, and I'm going to use the vertical construction line as they call it, as I would call it the vertical waterline. And then I can place it wherever I like. So I'm going to just more or less place it here on the left hand side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to just draw a light small line here as a reference. So that's going to be my starting reference point on line XY. Now what I want to do is I want to create a line segment AB, of which I will see the front and the top view, and I'm just going to give it specific placement. So I want point A to be on the left hand side, somewhere on this reference line. And in order to do that, I'm going to go and click again on this waterline option, and I'm going to go to the circle tool because I like to measure with my circle tool when I measure in CAD. You can just use parallel lines as well. But I'm going to go to this intersection here and I'm going to press the I key on my keyboard as a shortcut. That is to bring me to the intersection of those two lines. I want label A to be about 10 millimeters above the XY, or in other words, the horizontal plane. And I want it to also be 10 millimeters in front of the XY, or in front of the vertical plane. So I'm going to go and say tab so that I can give a value to this measurement, and I'm going to say 10 millimeters and enter. Now I can go to this button on the left hand side, which is then for placing a reference point. But I'm going to right click on it again so that I can change its properties. I'm going to go to point, and I want to use the circle option here, and I'm going to change the value here to 0.5 so that the radius of that dot is going to be 0.5. So now what I want to do is I want to go and hover over this here, make sure that I select the circle option. If I zoom in and I now press I on the keyboard for the shortcut for intersection, it will place the dot at that intersection as well as the intersection at the bottom, and there I have it. So now I can go and draw in using my line tool on the far left and changing the properties at this option here. I'm going to do it as gray because it's going to be a construction line that I'm going to draw on my paper, because we draw exactly the same on paper as that what we do on CAD. And I'm going to just place it there and press I on the keyboard to make sure it snaps to the center. So there I have my construction line, which is my projection line from the one view to the other, crossing my XY. And you should know by now that you always have to do your construction line perpendicular across a XY line, because an XY line, the definition for it is to separate views from one another. So we have our front view here at the top and our top view at the bottom, if this drawing is done in first angle of a graphic projection. And therefore we're also going to label by choosing the A option here for text, and I'm going to zoom in there. I'm going to say that's lowercase a to give that reference point a name, and I'm going to click on it, drag the yellow dot and just place the A next to that reference. So now I can again go and select the text tool and more or less where I want to place A, press A, and then I'm going to hold down Alt 0185. That's the Alt key to create that to the power of 1, and then I just click off somewhere, and that will then give me my A1 reference point, and I'll just position that out of the way into appropriate place. Now I can go and clear all of these water lines that I've used thus far so that I can actually clean up my workspace as I go along. So I go to edit, I go to clear, and I say all constructions. So with that done, I now have the placement of reference point A on my front view in first angle, and the reference point of A1 of my top view for that same reference point. And now I can move on to placing reference point B. So let's just say that reference point B is going to be 50 millimeters to the right of reference point A. So I'm going to go and I'm going to use my either parallel line tool, which if I hold down on that waterline icon there, I can use my parallel line tool and make it parallel to A and A1, or I can just use my circle tool like I usually do. It doesn't matter, you decide, but let's use, for just the sake of it, the parallel line tool in this case. Click on that line and make sure that when we click on it, you choose the one that is discoloring, and that will be parallel to that line that we want. And I drag my mouse to the orientation of where I want to place it, and I keep my eye on the offset here at the bottom of the screen. So I go and I press tab, and then I see that it turns blue on the offset value at the bottom left of the screen, and I'm going to say to it, but I want it to be 50 millimeters to the right. So it's a positive 50 because it's moving right and not negative 50. So now I press enter, and that will place the waterline as a guide for myself. Immediately I want to now go and draw a light construction line. So it's gray. I'm just going to draw a perpendicular line, just indefinite in length, across there and place it on that reference line. And remember, hold down shift to force it to be straight, to move straight. So once I've done that, I need to know how high I want to place point B and above the XY line. So therefore I'm going to go use my water line, the circle tool this time, to measure it off. And from that intersection here, I'm going to press I for that intersection. And I'm going to say, let's make point B 30 millimeters above the XY, or above the horizontal plane in that sense, and press enter. Now I go to my reference point and select that dot on the left hand side, zoom in, make sure that I snap with the I shortcut key, and now I can immediately go and select the text tool and label that reference point as B. Click off it, and I can then use the selector tool to just place my B where I want it to be. Zoom out with the mouse roller button. And then I go to the bottom, and this time around I want B1 on my top view to be, let's say, 40 millimeters in front of the XY, or in front of the vertical plane in first angle. And therefore I'm going to go select my waterline tool, zoom in there, and on the intersection press I, and I'm going to zoom out and say, let's say tab, and make that 40 millimeters in radius, press enter. Once again, go to the dot selection, and over that intersection, after I've zoomed in, press I, and now I can also use the text tool to label that as B, and I have to say B1. So therefore I'm going to hold down Alt and say 0185 on the keyboard, and then I just click off that. And now I have the placement of our reference point B1, which is the top view of that reference point. And now what I need to do is just clear the clutter and the excess line. So I'm going to go to the right side of my screen, click and hold. And if I hover my mouse over these options, there's the line length tool option. So I'm going to select that, and I zoom in here, and I'm just going to change that line option to snap to the intersection there, so that is a neat and clear line construction. The same at the top, go and I on the keyboard, that will snap it perfectly to place. And now I'm sitting with these water lines that I don't want, so I go to edit, clear all constructions. Now I've gotten the position of the line segment AB on the front view, and then the top view of that line segment, which we call A1, B1, on our top view. And therefore I'm just going to use my line tool option, and I'm going to go and change that to a dark solid line. And I'm going to change the thickness of that to 0.5, so that when I do the print out, that I can clearly see the differentiation between my different line types. So from center point A, I'm going to go there and draw a straight solid line to B. That will give me the front view in first angle of my line segment AB. And then on the top view, I also go to the center of reference point A1, and I draw a solid line to the center of reference point B1. And there I have the top view of my line segment in first angle. Now we have set up the line segments in our front and top view. Now we want to use the cone method to determine the true length of line AB. Let's use the waterline tool, or you could just use a light construction line tool as well. So rather, let's go with that. Go and select the gray, and then from A1 I have to now go and draw a line, a light construction line parallel to the XY line, extruded from A1, that is definitely 100% parallel to line XY. That's the first step. The next step, what I do on paper, you will take your compass. So on CAD, I'm just going to go and take my arc tool. So I'm going to click and hold on the circle here on the far left. And then I will find the arc and center radius tool over here. Select it. Zoom in onto that center point. Press I to make sure I've got to the center intersection. Move my mouse all the way to the intersection of B. And I'm going to make sure it's right there. Now I've got this loose line that I can move around. This is to show that I can now place where I want to start and finish that arc segment. So, just to keep this in mind, in TurboCAD we use this in an anti-clockwise method. So we are going to start with B and we're going to then drag it anti-clockwise towards that line, which is parallel to the X, Y, and then click again. So you will see that it cuts off perfectly onto that parallel line construction that we've done. Once we've done that, I see now I've forgotten to change this line out to a light construction line because it's a construction. So that's no problem in CAD. Just on paper, make sure that you draw it light. So I'm going to use the selector tool and I'm going to select that arc segment and I'm going to change the properties of that to gray. Once I've done that, click off it. You can clearly see how quick and easy on CAD I could have changed now that color of our line to a construction line, which in this case I use gray for. And now what I need to do is from this intersection where that arc segment intersected with that parallel construction line segment, I'm going to draw a line perfectly 90 degrees upwards to my front view. So I'm going to select my line tool, make sure that it's on gray, and then at that intersection press I on the keyboard and then I click and hold on shift and drag that line out vertically like that, indefinite in length for the time being. We'll do the cleanup just now. Once I've done that, I must now realize that I have taken point B1 and swung that point B1 to a different distance. In other words, I have now used point A1 as a pivot point. So A1 was our pivot point for the compass, but B1 was the projected point. So now where we have taken B1 and swung that around, we now have to, in our front view, take that point that we have been using and manipulating, and from that point B on the front view, hold down the shift by clicking on that center of that dot, drag out the construction line and place it perfectly parallel to the XY as well. So therefore we have now swung B1 around so that we can force this line to be parallel to the XY, and that's why in the front view we had to take point B and project that line to parallel to the XY line. So once we have that, we're going to use our circle as a reference point, and we're going to zoom in and make sure we're exactly on that intersection and place the dot. Now that one will now be called capital B, because that is now the actual true placement of the reference point B. And I can now also go and clear up the clutter on my page here by just using the line length tool and doing that proper. And I've got my label there that clearly says that is the capital B. So that is the actual true point B or reference point B of my drawing. But where is capital A, which is the actual reference point of A? And that is what we need to realize now is A1 was our pivot point. It didn't move. That was stagnant. So therefore, in our front view, A also didn't move. But we can now go and say that this is capital A exactly on that same dot where we have lowercase a. So there's my capital A. And now I have the reference point for capital A. And I also have the reference point for capital point B. So now those two reference points are determined. So I'm going to use my line length tool, and this time I'm just going to go a bit extreme so that you can clearly see the thickness of the actual line AB line that I want, and I'm going to use a 1 millimeter thickness. I'm going to make it solid. You would just draw this dark solid on your paper, and then from that intersection of the dot in the center of A, I'm going to draw a solid line out to the center of that dot at B, and that will give me the true length of line AB, and that's why we called it capital AB. And now we have to label that line AB as a true length as well. So I'm just going to create a capital TL for true length and click off it, and now use my selector tool, take that true length label, and I'm going to just place it here somewhere, and then I'm going to turn it so that it's ever so slight, more or less orientated along with the slope of that line. And I'm just going to move it a bit more into place, and let's just take off the snap, and then I'm just going to place it there. We can place it, but place it wherever it makes sense. I don't like placing it underneath a line. I like to place it on top of the line, so you can see that there's definitely an indication that that dark solid line capital AB is my true length. That is the cone method to determine the true length of a line segment AB. Now what we want to do is show the second part, which is then the projection method of determining the true length. Now we have done the true length here as capital AB on the left hand side using the cone method. So now I'm just going to show you the projection method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now project here from line AB on my front view, or in other words the vertical plane. In that case I'm going to go and use line reference AB or segment AB, and I'm going to do the projection from AB. And what I need to do for this projection method is a little bit different than that what we did with the cone method. The cone method is used when you do your transition pieces, so I would recommend that you master the cone method, but I just wanted to show you how to do the projection method of the true length as well. Now this is also very easy, so let's start by zooming in a little bit there to line segment AB, and what we want to do is use parallel to line AB in our front view, a XY line that we're going to place just a comfortable distance away from that given line so that we don't interact or cross over any of the existing lines or constructions that we have. So I'm going to go to the left of my buttons, and I'm going to go and select here the parallel construction line, or as I've referred to as the parallel water line. So I'm going to select that. With that activated, I make sure it is definitely activated, and anywhere on this line AB I can go and click, and it will create for me a parallel water line that I can use, and then I can stretch it to a specific distance as an offset from line AB, or I just can randomly place it depending on the amount of space that you have and what purpose you want to use it for. So I'm just going to randomly extend it to a comfortable distance away and place that light construction line or the water line. Now perpendicular to that line, I need to go and draw a construction line that's going to be projected at an angle of 90 degrees with line AB from segment or reference point A and reference point B towards the XY line that I have just placed. So let's start by just drawing in that XY line as a dark solid line. So on that line, I want to just activate my snaps again. So on that line, I'm just going to start, and I'm just going to change that value to 0. And then I'm just going to drag on this new version, the 21 version, upwards on TurboCAD. It will snap to that angle of the line if you click and place it, and then I will stop it at that. It's not a definite length, it's just an estimated proportional length. So there I have my next XY line. So we have to label that, and we're going to call this now capital X to the power of 1, which I'm going to hold down the Alt key and say 0185. That would give me that to the power of 1, and I'm going to click off it. Because we already have a XY, we now want a X1, Y1, and I'm going to hold down Alt and say 0185 on the keyboard, and I'm going to click off on it. Now I have X1, Y1 placed in position, and I can use that now when I do my projection as a division between the front view and then determining the true length in this open space over here. So this is my actual horizontal plane, which is the top view. So we want to take the true length and determine the true length of line A1, B1 and project it into this open space. And once again, as you have most likely learned already, we're going to use the measure, skip, measure method to do that. But before we get there, let's just make sure that we now do the projections from reference point A and B correctly. So for that, we can also use a tool here on CAD. On paper, you will use your board ruler and your adjustable triangle, line it up so that you can draw a 90-degree light construction line from reference point A and B across the X1, Y1. So on CAD, what we do is there is a perpendicular tool, so it's a lot easier. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to just click on the line to which I will draw a perpendicular line, and that's line AB. And then I'm going to make sure that I snap exactly to the center reference by pressing I on the keyboard. There I have the guideline for that, and I'm going to do the same thing anywhere on line AB. Going to click, make sure that I select AB's line, go to that intersection, and then I draw that line or place it. Now, just so that it's visible, I'm going to use the line length tool again, change the color to gray because it's a construction line, and then I can go back to the reference point I already have this angle at 90 degrees, so indefinite in length. I'm just going to project that construction line 90 degrees over the X1, Y1, and also 90 degrees with line segment AB. And then I'm going to do the same with point B. So I'm going to go there, reference point selected, and then I'm just going to indefinitely extend that 90-degree projection. So now I have the projection lines, which is construction lines that is then projected 90 degrees from line segment AB and crosses the X1, Y1 at an angle of 90 degrees. So we abide by the rules of our projection. And now I can get rid of all the excess lines and these water lines that I don't need. So I'm going to go to Edit, Clear, All Constructions. Once I've done that, now I'm going to use my measure, skip, measure method. So therefore we're going to go to our XY line, and from the XY to the reference point we're going to measure that distance. Now we already also know the distance, but use your divider on paper and go and measure that distance exactly from the XY to A1, which we know must be 10 millimeters. So what we do is we follow from A1 the projection line where we measured, then we're going to go and follow the route of A, and we're going to skip the front view because we're not going to do anything here. We're just using this projection line as a guide from where we will measure. And then at the X1, Y1, we will place our divider, and we will then carry over that 10 millimeters to that projection. And now we know that reference point A2 will be over there because that's the next value. We've already used A in the front view, A1 in the top view, and now in our projection we will use A2, and these values will always be one more than that of the value of your XY line. So if it was X1, Y1, we will now have our next reference point as A2, B2. A, and then hold Alt and say 253, and that will give us to the power of 2. Click off it, and we then select that A2 and we place it where we want it. And now we can do the same to determine B2. We will measure here at the top view our horizontal plane B1. We will skip our front view, the vertical plane, but we will follow the route of that reference point. So then from the X1, Y1, we will measure out the distance that we measure here from the XY, from there to the point. And in this case, the distance I think was 40 millimeters. So therefore, we're going to take that 40 millimeters, follow the line's construction or projection, and then from here, we're going to go and say 40 millimeters. Once we've done that, we just place the reference point and press I. There, that's placed. Select the text tool, click just off it, and we're going to say B and then Alt 253. That will give us B2. Once we've clicked off of that, we can now go and place it in the right position. Now we sit with a lot of unnecessary lines. So let's first go edit, clear all constructions, and we go to our line length tool on the far right, and we select that tool and we bring that to the center of that dot, and we do the same with A2, clean up our drawing, and now we have the line segment A2, B2's reference points, and we can just go and draw in the line A2 by selecting the line option, change the color to solid, change the line thickness, in this case just for emphasis, as 1 millimeter thickness. And I'm going to go and from the center of that dot, just make sure that it's from the center, go and draw a solid line to B2. And there we have it. Now that A2, B2 will be the true length of line segment AB. And then what we also need to do is place that reference of the label that says that it's a true length with capital TL. And I'm also going to just turn that a little bit so that it is with the angle of the line, more or less like that. And there we go. Now we've indicated that A2, B2 is the projected true length of our line segment. So here we now have both the cone method on the left hand side and then the projection method of the true length on the right hand side. Thank you for your time and thank you for watching. I want to thank the guys from TurboCAD Africa, EGD Learning. I also want to thank the online school. The link to these organizations is in the description below. Thank you very much.